Hello, this is Peter from Franke de la Fuente Abogados, and today we are recording a podcast, a first of many, I hope, here in the Balearics, in the beautiful city of Palma de Mallorca. So what we have done the last few years before we established our office here is, of course, to have do a lot of research about the market here, to study buyer behavior, read all the stats and figures, etc. But of course, we do that also in conversation with the market, and mainly we do that by talking to a lot of real estate agents here in the Balearics, and most specifically here in Palma. And one of these agents that I met and I've gotten to know now throughout the years here is Isabella from BARNES.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you here. So we thought, why not put on the cameras? Because we had a lot of interesting conversations in the past, and I thought, why not do it now in a format of a podcast? To understand a little bit more about yourself and about BARNES, but we'll also discuss a little bit about the market here. And it's interesting from a certain perspective, not only from your experience as a broker in Palma, but you have actually also worked as an agent in Marbella.
Correct, yeah.
So you have both those perspectives. So we might actually dig into that a little bit. But before we go and enter those details, if you would like to introduce yourself a little bit first.
Sure. So I'm Isabella. I'm a senior agent at BARNES Mallorca. And we mainly focus on the southwest areas and Son Vidar, and that's the main areas we're focusing on. And then we also have a bit of properties in the central of Mallorca now, because there's more demand coming for the fincas in Santa Maria and Alaro. And then we do a bit of the southeast coast around Santani as well.
Right, so it's BARNES.
Yes.
And let's start with BARNES then. Can you tell us a little bit more about BARNES as a company, where the background and...
Yeah. So BARNES is an American-French company. And basically, if you would compare BARNES with Engel & Volkers, it's as known in France as Engel & Volkers is known in Germany. So that's kind of the same concept. And then we're really international based. So we have offices all over the world, in Miami, Dubai, New York as well. And then now the office here just reopened last year in March. And we have an office based in Palma, and then a second office based in the Bandinat Urban Country Club.
I see. And being an American-French company, would you say that your clientele is also American-French, or is it completely international?
I would say here it's completely international as well. We do have also a lot of French clients and clients from Monaco and Switzerland, because we're quite known there. So basically Switzerland and France are the majority where BARNES is very known. And then we do get clients from all over the world.
I see. All right. And I mentioned that you have your experience from working the Marbella market. So a little bit about yourself as well.
Sure.
So what's your background?
Yeah. So I studied international business management in Germany. And then I was working in marketing. I had my own marketing agency. And then I moved to Marbella in 2020. And then started there in real estate. And then I moved here 2 years ago.
All right. And how did you make the jump from marketing activities, so to speak, marketing industry in Germany, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To real estate in Spain? Was it always something that you were interested in, or did something that just happen?
It's somehow just happened, but also it's kind of connected, because you always need the marketing as well in real estate.
Yeah.
And then also during college, I was working in sales. So that all kind of connected and then led to real estate. Yeah.
I see. And it's, of course, anyone that knows something about the Palma market, the Balearics real estate market, surely will also know that Germans, of course, have a very, very big influence on this market.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's actually 50% any longer, but let's say it's around those figures, right?
Yeah.
So 50% of the buyers traditionally, let's say, have been Germans buying here. So growing up in Germany and then later working in marketing, were you sort of aware of the German presence in Palma? Is it something that Germans know about, so to speak?
Yeah, they do. So basically all my childhood, we always came here, because it's kind of known that Germans always come here on holidays. So yeah, I was always aware that Mallorca is much more German than Marbella is. So yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a simple and a difficult question at the same time, but why? Do you know why? Why are the Germans so highly?
Not really. It's kind of like at one point, probably in the past, all the Germans came here and then everyone just followed. But now, I think since COVID, it became much more international as well.
Yes. Well, in Germany have had their own difficulties internally with their economy, etc. Right? Okay, so started out in real estate in Marbella, and then now for some time, right, in Palma.
Yeah.
So, what would you say are the main differences between the Palma market and the Marbella market?
I would say in Marbella we have much more turnkey homes, and here there are more properties which still need refurbishment or still need to be built, and that's especially because due to the licenses, as it's much easier to get licenses in Marbella than it is here. So I would say it's a bit easier in Marbella to find really the properties for the clients, as you have more which is really turnkey to move in now. And here you always still usually need to wait a bit of a time. And then there are so many clients waiting for those turnkey homes that usually when something really nice and finished comes out, it also sells quite fast here.
Yeah, that's interesting. And of course, me being from the legal side of things, we're always a little bit, we're the nerds here. We're interested in the technical details when it comes to how to buy a property in these two regions. And I myself know now that there are slight differences.
Yes.
One main difference, I would say, is that from a legal point of view, is that in the Costa del Sol and in other regions as well, we're quite accustomed to the reservation contract, which is usually a letter of intent contract, signed within just a few days, many times the same day as they agreed the terms and conditions. And then the parties agreed to sign a private purchase contract, the Spanish arras contract, usually within 2 to 3 weeks. Then, finally sign the escritura, the title deed at the notary sometime thereafter. But here in Palma, of course, we understand, we know ourselves, being here for a while, that it's not that common with a reservation contract. What do you think about that?
I think it's much easier because it kind of calms both parties down a bit, because both parties are knowing that now the price is agreed. There's a reservation in place. And then it makes it a bit easier to go on to the next step. But now here in Mallorca, they always just do the arras contract. So you usually have a bit of like uncertainty still always until that happens.
Yeah.
Because there's basically nothing like legally binding yet.
Yeah. I have my own opinion, of course, about the reservation contract, but it was interesting to hear yours, that it's mainly a tradition that, and that's quite normal. I mean, we see that in many, jurisdictions and countries, etc. You have legal traditions on how you usually conduct your business. I think that there is a good reason, at least sometimes, to choose the reservation contract, because, as you say, it gives some kind of solidity, at least a starting point. And that's actually quite common in business anyway. I mean, in any kind of larger transactions as well, you have the letter of intent. I have the ambition to buy this asset under these main conditions and etc. So let's start there and move forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I guess, of course, that it happens as well that you have maybe buyers coming over and they want to make an offer. They have made an offer. There are terms and conditions outlined. Then they fly back home, and then 2, 3, 4 weeks later, nothing is even signed yet. And of course, you have second thoughts. Maybe you have doubt, or just the energy is sort of gone from the momentum is gone, so to speak. Okay, so if you would choose, if you had the power over the islands, you would advise people to use the reservation contract.
Yeah, and also still, because it can always still happen that another buyer comes in and places another offer.
That's true.
So with the reservation contract, you're also more sure on that side.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one of the differences between Marbella and Palma, of course. That's, let's say, technical differences when it comes to the process and so on. And you told us also about the products, with the turnkey products in Marbella compared to here. Does that also mean that you said that stock of products, are more available, let's say, or the more more different types of products
Exactly,
in Marbella compared to Palma.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And how about also, because this is interesting difference, I think, because in Marbella, you would know, in Costa del Sol in general, there is a quite established, well-established form of collaboration between real estate agent. So all agents, mainly, they have access to a software.
Exactly.
They log into that software and they upload their properties in that portal. All the other agents can access it, which means that you if you have a client, you can basically more or less, I'm not saying it's 100%, but more or less you have access to most properties on the coast.
Yeah.
How is it here?
Well, that system doesn't exist here. So here it's really that usually all the agencies are using their own CRM system.
Yeah.
So we do not have the option like we had in Marbella to just go in the system, you put in the criteria, and you're able to really send everything to the clients what there is. So here that kind of form of collaboration doesn't exist. No.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying, and maybe we can discuss it. I'm not saying that the one in Costa del Sol is necessarily much better. It gives you, of course, it's easier because you believe that you have access to everything. But at the same time, I know from my own experience, but also talking to a lot of agents here that, and in Marbella, that the reliability of those collaborations are not always that solid.
Yeah.
So you have issues with planning viewings, or maybe there are agents that actually don't have the correct information about the property. There's no collaboration contracts signed between the vendor and the agent. It's a bit difficult in that way. Would you agree with me? Yeah,
it's of course always the best to be in contact with the buyer and the seller, because then you're able to control the whole situation, and then those situations don't happen. Yeah.
Exactly. But here in Palma, then, you do collaborate, I guess, as well. But is it a different kind of collaboration, or how does it work?
Yeah, usually, well, at least in my case, I usually work with sellers and buyers directly.
Yeah.
And then we only really collaborate when they're exclusive listings.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, and you're, if you would describe then Isabella, the broker.
Yes.
What would you say then? How do you prefer to work as an agent with buyers and sellers? What's important for you?
For me, it's usually quite important to get to know the buyers well, to understand what they're really looking for, what their preferences are. And then also it's always important if they've been to the island before, because some clients, sometimes they heard of Son Vida, but then they really don't know where it is, or they heard of Andrade and they still have to come here to really feel the areas. And then I work really personally with my clients, so I take a lot of time for them and usually do like all the pre-work before they also come here, so just to be sure that they don't waste time when they're here.
So am I right in saying that it's mainly higher value properties that you are focusing on?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And any types of properties that you would say that you're more interested in as well, or your clients, for your clients?
Well, we have a bit of their seafront properties and then also the more finca style properties. So I would say we do both kind of.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And when it comes to, because your language, the languages that you speak, of course, German, right?
Yes.
And English then, clearly. Any other languages?
Yes, I speak French and Spanish as well.
All right, then.
Yeah.
That's quite useful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's good with international clients, yeah.
How about the French and Palma? Is there a good market of French buyers here?
There are more French people coming to the island. Also in Santani, there are more French people now looking. But of course, it's not the majority yet.
Yeah. So which buyers' nationalities would you say are the most active at the moment?
There's still the German buyers, and the buyers from Switzerland are quite active. But also we notice that more Danish people are looking now.
Yeah.
And then the North Americans are slowly coming as well. And as well people from Canada we had now recently. And that's mainly also because now there are flights this year from Canada and Abu Dhabi, and then also the New York flight again. Yeah.
We are opening up to the world.
Yeah.
In Marbella and here as well.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
No, and that is, of course, something that many other people have mentioned and spoken about as well. But Palma and Marbella, of course, becoming one of the major hotspots for real estate globally.
Yeah.
You mentioned Monaco here before.
Yes.
It's not the same kind of market, of course, but price-wise, we are moving into, we're similar to London, to Dubai, to Miami, and this kind of places. And then, of course, American buyers are coming.
Exactly. Yeah.
And talking about the Americans, then, what would you say is my experience, of course, with Americans is that they in the end, we're on the other side of the Atlantic. It's a completely new country. Compared to, let's say, Germans, for instance, what would you say is the difference when you are assisting those different kind of clients?
Usually with American clients, it takes them 2 or 3 times until they really know if they want to buy here. So usually when they come for the first time, they have to get to know all the areas, and they don't really like buy when they come over here the first time. They usually come 2 or 3 times, and then they really decide if they want to buy here. So it takes a bit longer time, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say that they're all the same, but of course it is. Exactly. If I would buy something in America, I wouldn't really know where to start.
That's right.
So I think that the first idea might be to get a place in Europe, and then where in Europe, and then Spain, Marbella, Palma, etc., and then it moves further. Or if they have friends, of course, and family that already knows the area.
And then there are also some American clients who work in Madrid, for example, and then they want to buy in Mallorca because they heard from friends again. It's nice to go there.
Yeah. Okay, and how about the relocation trend? I established a new word for myself in our law firm, and that's the relocation law.
Yes.
And we chose to use that phrase because we see ourselves as lawyers assisting clients that are relocating. They're not only buying the property, they want to bring their businesses, they need tax advice, they need immigration advice, and so on. So what is your view on that? And are your clients relocating, or is it mainly second home clients?
It's, I would say, like 50-50, but there are more and more people who really want to relocate completely. And I would also say here there are much more families than there are in Marbella buying. So it's usually like younger families who then also think about putting the kids on the schools here and then relocating completely. Yeah.
So from let's say the traditional real estate advisory job, so to speak, what's the shift from just selling a property to now advising people on completely other things?
Yeah.
How's that worked out for you?
Yeah, because usually you kind of like, when you're dealing with a buyer, you become their advisor for a lot of other things as well, of course.
Yeah.
They ask you about the school, they ask you about hotels, restaurants, where to stay. Then even afterwards, which hospitals are good, which tennis clubs, so you kind of become an all-around advisor for them at one point. Yeah.
Lifestyle advisor.
Yeah.
That's a big trust.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
No, that's completely right, and we see that. And I think let's look into the future 5-10 years from now. That's definitely going to be the case, and the world is going to just get smaller for the buyers, and they might even want to have the advice: should we move to Dubai, Palma, or somewhere else? So I definitely think that's the direction we're heading to. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the local market then. And when it comes to prices and stock, available products throughout 2025, in your view, moving into 2026, first of all, starting with the prices, what's your view on the current situation?
The prices are still steady here, and mainly for those properties which are turnkey and ready, the prices are also still stable. The only thing what we are seeing a bit is that with those properties which need refurbishment, they might be sometimes a bit overpriced, and it takes a longer time to sell them. Yeah.
Okay. And availability of stock or products for is there enough properties for clients here, or you're always looking for more, I guess?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Well, in the prime areas, the stock is getting a bit tight. Yeah.
So if anybody's out there that wants to sell, they can call you, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. No, of course. Yeah.
Okay. And so if let's say that you have now, we have an American buyer here listening, or a German, from any country for that matter, and they're thinking about moving to or buying something in this region. What's your advice? Where do they start? How should they approach that project?
I would always say for them to be prepared and informed about everything already before they come and get as much information as possible, and sometimes even maybe talk already to a lawyer before you're coming here and see like what all is going to happen when you decide for a property. And then especially because the stock is so low, to be prepared then when you find something you really like, that you can also act.
Yeah.
Because it happens, of course, sometimes that clients like properties, but then they still need to get all the legal processes ready.
Yeah.
And that might be too late until they decide that.
Yeah. I think that's something that I realized when we started the law firm around 5 years ago, and I had a career being a lawyer in Sweden, moved over here and started to work in Spanish real estate, is that traditionally, and I'm not talking about maybe 10 years back, at least in the Costa del Sol area, the conveyancing lawyers, transaction lawyer, real estate transaction lawyer was quite technical, meaning that you only provided a certain service when the real estate agents already had agreed on the terms and condition, and you just carried out a simple process, right? You want to buy this property, right? We'll make it happen for you. But what you mentioned now is absolutely correct, meaning that there are so many other legal matters that usually the client needs to understand before even entering into a first offer situation. Yeah. That could be how they would immigrate to this country if they want to spend more than 183 days. It will be their tax situation. But mainly also, I know that you are very good at explaining the process to your clients, but the urbanistic situation can sometimes be a challenge to understand. So just have to have that basic understanding of how the process here works in comparison to their home country.
Of course, yeah.
It just becomes more and more important, I think. It has been more and more important for lawyers now the last few years or so. So the teamwork between broker and lawyer has never been more important. I'm ranting on right now, but please let me give me just a few more seconds, because I think it's we are both providing a service to a client. You're in contact with the client first, but at some point you believe that I think that the lawyer needs to step in now. And then we do it together. We have this. We're working towards the same goal together with our clients. And that close collaboration for our mutual client, I think, is absolutely essential.
Of course.
To secure everything for them. Yeah. Thank you for letting me speak.
Of course, no problem. That's true.
All right, Isabella. Before we end now, let's look into the not the mirror, but let's look into the future. 2026 and throughout, maybe 5-10 years from now, what do you see in the Palma Balearics real estate market?
Well, we already saw in 2025 that more people are also now starting to look at apartments and townhouses in Palma. So there are currently some even like complete houses for sale in Palma, which was not the case before. So it's kind of also moving that people more want to be in the town now and don't just want to be like more in Andratx or Portals where they're going to have bigger land with gardens and pool. So the shift is also shifting a bit to the more city life here as well.
Okay, that's interesting. And do you, in terms of nationalities, do you think that the Germans will keep their stronghold of Palma, or it will be a more diverse market?
I think it's going to be a more diverse market.
More.
But probably you will always still have the buyers or sellers side German. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a wrap.
All right, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This is the first episode of our new podcast in Palma. I think we did all right.
Well, maybe we did.
Yeah, we did. All right. Thanks, Isabella, and thanks everyone for watching.